Okay, I'm going to start off on page 82 if anybody's got this book. I bless you, my son, in the name of power of the mighty one God in man and governing the universe, whose supreme wisdom shall direct you, whose light shall illumine you, whose love shall bless and unfold you, and the land and its people. Touching the thumb of his right hand to the forehead of the son, the beloved master raised his left hand, and a binding flash of light enfolded them. So yesterday they were at this banquet. So this is a carry on from the story. Beloved ones of light, your brother the king will soon pass, and his well-deserved rest and higher instructions. Until that time I will remain with you. Your civilization will reach its apex under the rulership of this our beloved brother, and you will need much added wealth to accomplish all that is to be done. In the heart of the mountains, not far distant, is a great treasure of gold and precious stones. The younger son of the ruler has not so far recalled a faculty he used formerly. I will quicken it into action again, that the requirement of your future activities be supplied. He stepped towards the younger son and touched his forehead with his thumb of his hand. A tremor passed over the body, and his inner sight became opened. He saw in mountain vastness a certain location which held such vast wealth he knew they would need no other supply for whatever might be required to produce the things they were to use in the outer activities. The son made obeisance, obedience, or whatever, to his beloved master, and promised that, with his assistance, a plan for its use would be fulfilled. 3 of the mines which he opened and operated were closed and sealed when the reign of those of the Golden City was finished. They have remained closed to this day. So when they went in his caverns and he was shown all of this, they activated the past, they looked at this, and they created the story of all of this going on. And they're saying those caverns of gold and jewels and that is there, and in the future will be given to the world when the time is right. The following day, messengers were sent to the principal point in the empire, announcing the ascension to the throne of the king's son. His repetition had preceded him from the city of Mitla. For his wisdom, nobility, and character and justice were known throughout the kingdom during the years he served there. A few days later, the young son directed the head mining engineer to prepare equipment, men, supplies for going into the mountain, opening the mine he had been shown through the use of his inner sight. When they were ready to start, the son remained alone and held his attention fixed steadily on the God self within, knowing that he would be directed unerringly in finding the mine. Because of this, he had no difficulty or delay in going directly to the location shown him in the vision. He put a large number of men to work, and in 60 days had opened the mine to the point where they made contact with the richest gold vein that has ever been located in South America before or since that time. The discovery and operation of the mine has come down to the present day in legend among the people. The younger son returned from his achievement amidst the warm welcome of the people, receiving the blessings of his father, Saint Germain, his older brother and sister. The location of the mine was at an altitude of 8,000 feet, and during the time the king's son was there, he became highly sensitized to the activities that always occurred at high elevation. Upon his return to the palace, he felt clearly the time had arrived for the Inca ruler to make the great change, and knew his passing was near. The day arrived for the coronation of the king's son, when he was to eligibly and publicly assume the responsibilities and duty of the realm. The royal family asked their brother beloved master and friends to perform the act of crowning the new ruler, to which he graciously agreed. Elaborate preparation for the important event had been completed, and the ceremony had progressed to the moment when the crown was to be placed upon the head of the new ruler. All noticed that Saint Germain made no effort to receive it. Suddenly there came a blinding flash of light, and before them stood a most wonderful being. She seemed to be a girl of only 18, but from her eyes' presence shone forth a dazzling radiance, filled with love, wisdom, and power of a goddess. The light that filled the atmosphere around her was crystal white, sparkling with itself and scintillating constantly. Extending her dainty hand to the crown bearer, she lifted the crown and with infinite grace placed it upon the head of the king's son. In a voice that was the very soul of the music said, "Beloved of the golden city, I crown you with love, light, and wisdom, of which this crown is the symbol. May your justice, honor, and nobility ever continue. By a divine order, I shall reign with you, invisible to all but those of the golden city who are here." The new ruler knelt and received the crown, and a wondrous being scooped and kissed his forehead. She then turned to the assembled guests, extended her hand, blessed them. Immediately a soft rose-colored light filled the entire place, it being the outpouring of her love to them. She blessed the former king, and turning to his daughter, held her in the fond embrace. To the younger son she extended her hand, and he, kneeling, kissed it with deep reverence. The new king ascended to the throne and bowed to his guests, offering his arm to the beautiful being. He led the way to the banquet hall, and here they celebrated the coronation by a feast. He gave the signal to be seated and then addressed them. "My great beloved people," he said, "I know there is but one mighty presence, God, in mankind and the universe, governing all. It is my desire, as it ever has been, to so live that my mind and body are clear channels and perfect expression of the one great dwelling presence." And that's where he was a hollow bone. "May you, my friends, my people, our land, and its activities always be blessed with God's greatest love, peace, health, and happiness. May this empire, which is God's dominion, and of which we are but the custodians, continue in abundant prosperity. The love of God in me shall always unfold you, and I ask God's eternal light to raise you into his divine perfection." As the banquet progressed, the former king grew very pale. The new ruler signaled his brother, who stepped to his father's side and assisted him to the private room of the royal family. The king lay down and remained motionless nearly 4 hours. His children and Master Saint Germain and the beautiful being remained at his side. When the final moment of his earth pass arrived, the beautiful being stepped forwards to the head of the couch on which he lay and addressed him, saying, "Brother Inca, thou hast thought to leave thy form to the actions of the four elements, but I say to thee, it shall be raised, transmuted, and illumined into the eternal temple of God that expresses all perfection. Thy great service has freed thee from the wheels of birth and death. Be thou now received by the ascended hosts of light, with whom thou art forever one." Slowly the body began to fade from sight, dissolving into the finest mist, then completely disappeared. Saint Germain turned to those who stood by. "My work here is finished," he said, and stepping forwards, placing a ring of most unusual design upon the third finger of the king's right hand. The jewel was a miniature self-illumined globe of some kind of precipitated substance that looked like pearl, and directly within the center was a tiny blue flame. It was a focus of light, the same as the globe Saint Germain had given to the king's father, with which the palace was lighted. Accept this, he continued, from the master of the golden city. It is his request that you wear it upon your person always. Bidding them farewell and bowing graciously, he disappeared from sight. The Inca's three children had perfect physical bodies due to the instructions that they had received in childhood from the Master Saint Germain when he came daily from the golden city to prepare them for their life service to people. All had most beautiful golden hair and violet blue eyes. The two sons were fully 6 feet 3 inches in height, the daughter about 5 feet 7. There was a great natural dignity of bearings, suggesting the inner dominion which they had gained under his instructions. When the elder son ascended the throne, he was 68 years old, yet looked no more than 25. Even at the time they left the earth, none looked more than that age. The new king reigned 47 years, living to the age of 115. The daughter lived to be 130, the younger son to 111. The Inca people of the period were all dark-eyed, dark hair and skin like American Indians. Those who incarnate as the mass of the Inca people were not souls of previous advanced knowledge, as was the case in some of the former civilizations, such as Egypt, Atlantis, and the Sahara Desert. For this reason, the great hosts of the Ascended Masters who direct the evolution of humanity on this earth place the Incan ruler, his children, and the rest of the 14 from the Golden City in charge of the government and its people to establish a pattern upon which the latter activities were to be molded. They designed a form of government and a plan to develop which, if adhered to, would have enabled the entire civilization to reach the greatest heights of outer accomplishment and at the same time receive tremendous inner illuminations. As the time drew near to select the ruler from among the Incas themselves to succeed the king and his assistant, great care was taken to choose those whose inner growth was most advanced. 14 were found to take the place of those from the Golden City. The beautiful beings made herself visible to the king every day for 47 years, giving advice and assistance through her radiation, though that wisdom and strength might be the directing power of the people. The successor to the king and the 14 from the Golden City were called into the presence of a much loved and wise ruler. Again, beautiful beings who had been invisible made herself visible to all. The light about her grew very, very bright, and she addressed them, saying, "For over 90 years the great Ascended Master of Light have taught, enlightened, blessed, and prospered the people and this empire. The example is before you. If you follow it, all will continue to prosper and bless your land. If you do not keep the love of your one supreme God self first in your hearts and acknowledge him always as the ruler of the empire and its inhabitants, decay will set in and the glorious perfection enjoyed over a century will be forgotten. I commend you to the care of the great supreme presence in all. May he ever protect, direct, and enlighten you." Here a visible proof of the existence of the inner God self of each human being was revealed to those who were to guide the destiny of the empire during the succeeding years. This same example will again be given to the present people of America, and this is where all of this stuff from the past is coming back. I've talked about stuff like this before. Then in the presence of the new ruler and in the associates, the king and the 14 of the Golden City stepped out of their bodies and revealed the divine self to each visible, to all assembled. In a few moments the physical body disappeared, dissolving in ambient air. Thus, explains Saint Germain, is revealed to you the records of another life, the blessings and achievements which result from loving acceptance of the supreme presence of the one God self within. Let us now go back to the royal Teton. We return to the entrance and pass forwards to the audience chamber. There on its wall were the portraits done on gold transferred from the ancient temples of Mitla. We went on to the record room to see the records carried by the beautiful glistening beings. Other things too had been brought, which I have no permission to reveal. We returned to the entrance and passed forwards to the audience chamber. There on the walls were the portraits done in gold transferred from the ancient temple of Mitla. I read that already. As these experiences ended, I realized, at least partially, something of what real love is, for no one can possibly explain the intense feelings of love and gratitude one has for the Ascended Masters after being permitted the experience I had passed through since first meeting Saint Germain. It can never be put into words. There is only one overwhelming desire in life after such a contact, and that is to be what they are. So everybody is meant to become Jesus and all these things. They're the teachers, and they're there waiting for people to want to grow and evolve and be a part of this future. And they can't make you believe in this. They can't make you believe in anything. You got to ask to learn and become this. One really knows such perfection is for all of God's children and is real as reality can be. Even the happiest life lived by the average human being is certainly the husk of existence compared to the ascended state of these great ones. The most beautiful and so-called perfect creation of human being, with all of their boasted power and accomplishments, is coarse and crude compared to the freedom, beauty, glory, and perfection that is the daily, continual experience of everyone who has raised the body as Jesus did. And that's where everybody's got to become Jesus and all these other things. My son, he said, you cannot receive what has not been earned. You deserve this and much more, which will become evident as we advance. Remember, however, what seems mysterious only appears so because it is unexplained. When understood, all unusual occurrences will be found natural and occurring according to the law. The following truth shall remain engraved on your memory forever. It is this: every one of God's children who will acknowledge and accept the presence of the one mighty God anchored within his heart and brain and feel that truth deeply many times a day, realizing that knowing God fills his mind and body so full of light, there is no room for anything else. He can be free. The one all-powerful presence is the mighty harmonious activity of the one life and affairs, and if his attention be fixed firmly with determination on his eternal truth, no heights of attainment is too great for him to reach. There is but one source and principle of life to which we should give our undivided attention, that is the God self within every individual. To the great harmonious self, and the personal self should give conscious recognition at all times and keep in constant inner communication with it, in no matter what the outer activity of the mind is. The one great self is the life energy flowing through every human body each moment, by which all are enabled to move about on the world of form. It is the wisdom flowing through the mind, the willing direct all constructive activities, the courage and strength sustaining every one, the feeling of divine love with which all forces can be qualified as it flows through the individual, the only power that can ever accomplish any good thing. It is the all victorious, conscious dominion over every condition of human activity. When released through the personal self without resistance or interruption, this mighty God self is within you, is the supreme ruler of all creation, and the only dependable, permanent, and eternal source of help in existence. Only through its love, wisdom, and power can anyone ever raise into ascended mastery, for constant conscious communication with it is freedom and dominion over all human creation. When I say human creation, I mean all that is discordant and less than perfect. We returned to my body, and as soon as I had re-entered it, Saint Germain took my hand and poured some stream of his divine energy through me to sustain and give strength. I instantly felt revivified in both mind and body. I sat down, fixed my attention to the deepened intensity upon my own God presence, and offered up a great prayer of gratitude for the tremendous blessings I had been privileged to receive. He bowed graciously and disappeared. So the next chapter is called Buried Cities of Amazon. A short time later, I was working intently one evening when I heard Saint Germain's voice distinctly. "Be ready," he said. "Tonight at 9 o'clock, and I will come for you." I was alert in an instant, hurried through my work, bathed, and was preparing for an early dinner. "I will bring you the proper nourishment," he explained, so I waited, entered into the deepest meditation of which I could be aware, recognizing only God's perfect manifestation. Promptly at 9 o'clock he appeared in my room, wearing garments of glistening metallic-like substance that looked as if made of varnished steel, but felt like the combination of very soft silk and rubber, extremely light in weight. I touched the beautiful, wonderful fabric and was so fascinated that I stepped forth from my physical body and was unaware of it until I turned and saw it laying on the bed. Stepping forwards to a large mirror in the door, I saw my garments were exactly those of Saint Germain. I wondered at this and did not understand why they were different from the ones in which we had gone forth before. He saw that question in my mind and answered it. "Try to realize, my son, that in the ascended condition of life, we are always free to use the pure, universal substance for whatever purpose we choose and give it any specific quality we desire for the requirement at hand. If we wish to use material that is imperishable, we impose that quality upon the pure, universal substance, and it responds accordingly. If we wish a form to be manifest only a definite length of time, we give the substance of which is composed that quality or command, and the form manifests accordingly. In the present instance, we are going to pass through water, and the radiation from the material in your garment so surrounds your finer body as to insulate you from the natural qualities and activity of the water element. Try to think upon this power which is within you. Call into use the great sea of the universal substance from which you may draw without limit. It obeys without expectation or direction of thought, and records of any quality imposed upon it through the activity of the feeling nature in mankind. Universal substance is obedient to your conscious will at all times. It is constantly responding to humanity, thought, and feeling, whether they realize it or not. There is no instance at which human beings are not giving this substance one quality or another, and it only through the knowledge that the individual has conscious control and manipulation of the limitless sea of it that he begins to understand the possibilities of his own creative powers and the responsibilities resting upon him in the use of his thought and feeling. Mankind through the centuries has qualified the universal substance with perishable and limitations, and the body it uses today are experiencing those characteristics. The entire human race has storms of hate, anger, revenge, criteria within its feelings, and the four elements which have recorded those qualities return to them, to man through the world of nature and storms. The people of earth have cataclysms of thoughts and feelings and resentments against each another, against injustice, against places and things, knowingly and unknowingly sending out the feeling of revenge. The great sea of universal substance upon which these qualities have been recorded and imposed express them back to their source, the individual, by means of the four elements as cataclysms in nature. Such activities are but nature's way of purifying and shaking herself free from the contamination of human discord, thought, and feeling, and returning her pristine conditions of God's purity. Every moment each individual is receiving into his mind and body the pure and perfect life of God. Each moment he is also giving qualities of some kind to the pure universal substance of God. His quality he alone creates and generates, and he must receive it back into his mind and body, for all things in the universe moves in circles and thus returns unto the source. The Ascended Masters have learned the law of the circle, the law of the one. Hence, we impose upon the pure universal substance only the qualities we wish to use. For the special work in hand, if we desire a manifestation to express a certain length of time, we set the time, give the command, and the substance of which that special manifestation is composed responds accordingly. In the case of the records at the Royal Teton and certain retreats throughout the world, it is necessary for our work that certain things be made imperishable in order to be maintained during the centuries. We decree that qualities into them, and they record exactly our decree. For nature never lies. She is a truthful recorder of the qualities playing upon her. She obeys us, also obeys man, but there is a certain activity within her that mankind is either in ignorance of or else stubbornly refuses to acknowledge. For this ignorance and stubbornness, it pays and pays and pays continually until the individual's personal self learns and does acknowledge this fundamental eternal truth. It is the law of the one, the law of love, the law of harmony, the law of circle, the law of perfection. When humanity really does learn that fact and obeys the everlasting decree, the discords of earth and the destructive activities of the four elements will cease. There is a self-generating, self-purifying force within nature that rises and throws off all that disagrees with the laws of one. This force or energy is pushing activity from within out and is the one power expanding. If discord is imposed upon pure universal substance, the electronic energy becomes temporarily dammed up within it. When such accumulated energy reaches a certain pressure, expansion takes place, shattering the discord and limitation. Thus, the great life of the one, the ever-expanding, luminous essence of creation, God in action, overpowers whatever seeks to oppose it, and goes on its appointed way, the supreme ruler of the universe. The Ascended Masters of Light know this, and are one with the knowledge. Mankind may know it and be at one also if they only will. It is within the capability and possibility of every individual, for it is the innate internal principle within the self-conscious life. All human beings are self-conscious life. This principle plays no favorites, and all can express its fullness if they really so desire. Within the life of every human being is the power by which he can express all the ascended masters, express every moment if he but chooses to do so. All life contains will, but only self-conscious life is free to determine upon its own course of expression. Hence, the individual has free choice to express either in the human, limited body or the superhuman, divine body. He is the closer of his own fields of expression. He is a self-determining creator. He has willed and chosen to live as a self-conscious life. When one individualizes within the absolute, all-pervading life, he chooses of his own free will to become an intensified individual focus of self-conscious intelligence. He is the conscious director of his future activities. Thus, having once made his choice, he is the only one who can fulfill that destiny which is not inflexible circumstances but definitely designed plan of perfection. It is the blueprint which he elects to express in the realm of form and action. So you see, my son, a human being may at any time determine to rise out of his human qualities or limitations, and if he will give it all of his life, his energy, that determination, he will succeed. Those of us who have raised the body's accomplishments, the ascension by giving all unto the God self within, and hence it expresses through us in its perfect qualities, the divine plan of life. Come, let us go. As we started on our journey, I was conscious of going southeast and passed over the Salt Lake City, New Orleans, the Gulf of Mexico, the Bahama Islands, and then came to a silver ribbon, which I knew was to be a river. This we followed to its mouth. As we proceeded, the God voice within said to me, "It is the Amazon." "Now be conscious," instructed Saint Germain, "that the God in you is always directing the master of every situation." Just at that moment we began to descend and in an instant touched the surface of the water. It seemed firm as solid earth under the feet, and I experienced a feeling of surprise at the contact. He explained further that we could go under the water quite as well as remain on top, for the garments we wore radiated a protective aura for a considerable distance around the body and contained the conditions we needed, which enabled us to explore the subterranean strata of earth and things under the water. This, he continued, is due to what the scientific world would call an electric force field around our bodies, but the electronic force with which these garments are charged is of a higher, finer electricity than that known in your physical world. Someday even your men of science will stumble upon it and realize it has always existed in the atmosphere, but they have not known how to direct and control it for the surface of mankind. It is much more easy directed by the mind than by the physical apparatus of any kind, yet it can be drawn and controlled through mechanical means. That which the outer world knows as electricity is but a crude form of the great spiritual energy of life. It exists throughout creation. As man rises and keeps his consciousness in contact with his inner God self, he will become aware of the gigantic possibilities in the use of this higher power and force. Its service to him is infinite in the creative works that he can do in all phases of activity. We then entered the waters, passing through it with no resistance at all. I was slightly startled at the novelty of the experience, but remembered instantly the admonition to be conscious only of the God within me as the master of every condition. Presently we came near the shore and passed over many crocodiles, who saw us, but were undisturbed by our presence. Proceeding inland, we came to what looked like the top of a monument. This is the top of a 60-foot obelisk, explained Saint Germain. There is only about 10 feet above. It is only about 10 feet above the ground. It marked the highest point in the city of importance that was buried during the last cataclysms when Atlantis was submerged. The obelisk is made of imperishable metal covered with hieroglyphics of that period. Notice they are very clear and will remain so because of the indestructibility of the metal. The city was originally built 10 miles from the edge of the river, but at the time it was submerged, the mouth of the river was widened many miles. We raised above the earth and passed forwards, following the Amazon to point 56 degrees west latitude. There we took observation. Then we proceeded to a point 70 degrees west. Saint Germain explained, here was the locality for further observation and research. The section he indicated covered the Amazon between these 2 points and almost 2 of its principal tributaries, the Wara and the Madria River. This civilization, said Saint Germain, was built during the period between 12 and 14,000 years ago. The portion of the country we are concerned with is that section reaching to the Madria River, empties into the Amazon to the point west where the Amazon touches Colombia and Peru. 13,000 years ago, the Amazon was held within the great dikes of stone. The entire country around it lay at a latitude of at least 5,000 feet, and instead of the tropical climate it has today, a semi-tropical temperature existed the year around. For a great distance in the locality, the country formed a tableland or plateau. Near the mouth of the Amazon were wide, beautiful falls. The city in which the obelisk stood was built between the falls and the seacoast, about 10 miles south of the river. There were great reptiles and vicious animals to be found in the Orinoco River of the north. We came to a place near the Madria River, and Saint Germain continued, this is the site of the ancient city, the capital and the empire of the most important place in the civilization of that period. Here he raised his hand. It became as clearly visible as any physical city is today. Notice, he explained, how it was built in a series of circles, and that the business streets go out from the center like the spokes from a hub of a wheel. The outer circles were pleasure drives built every third mile. There were 7 of these makings, the city 46 miles in diameter, including the central circle. Thus, the business activity did not interfere with the beauty and convenience of the drives. The inmost circle was 4 miles in diameter. Within it were placed the executive buildings and whole empire. The streets were all beautifully paved and constructed 18 inches to 2 feet below the surrounding buildings and ground. They were flooded every morning and washed thoroughly clean before the activities of the day began. Observe the unusual magnificence of the pleasure drives, and how gorgeously beautiful were the plants and flowers forming the banks on both sides. One very dominant feature of their architecture design was that on the top floor of almost all the buildings, especially residences, were built adjustable domes. These could be opened or closed at will, as they were constructed in four sections and arranged so as to serve for either sleep or entertaining purposes. The days were never uncomfortably warm, and at evening the wonderful cool air from the mountain came as regular as day appeared. We entered the capital, an enormous structure of great beauty. The interior was finished in cream-colored marble, veined in green, and the floor, made of a dark moss-green stone, resembling jade in its texture, had been laid so perfectly as to seem almost like one piece. There were large tables in the rotunda of the same kind of greenstone as the floors, but higher in shade. These had heavy bronze pedestals placed about 3 feet from each end. Here Saint Germain again held out his hand. We were among living people moving through the buildings and grounds. I held my breath astonished, for I saw an entire race of golden-haired people with beautiful pink and white complexions. The men stood fully 6 feet 2 to 6 feet 4 inches in height. The women averaged about 5'10". Their eyes were almost beautiful violet blue, very clear and brilliant, expressing great, calm intelligence. We passed through the doors at our right and entered the throne room of the emperor. It was evidently his audience day, for he was receiving foreign and local guests. It was the Emperor Casimir Poseidon and Saint Germain in explanation. He was truly God incarnate. Note the kindly nobility of his face, and yet the tremendous power within him. He was and is an ascended master, blessed and greatly beloved. For many centuries in myths and fables from his memory was kept alive, and the perfection of his kingdom described in epic poems. But as time passes into eternity, the memory of such great accomplishment fades and is often forgotten by succeeding generations. Casimir Poseidon was every inch a magnificent ruler. He was fully 6 feet 4 inches tall, well built and straight as an arrow. When he stood, he towered above those around him, and the very atmosphere seemed charged with mastery. His golden hair was heavy and hung full to the shoulder. The royal robe was made of a material that looked like velvet or violet-colored silk, velvet trimmed in gold, and under it he wore a close-fitting garment of soft golden fabric. His crown was a simple band of gold with an immense diamond in the center of the forehead. These people, said Saint Germain, were in direct contact with all parts of the world through marvelous aerial navigation that had been brought forth for their use. All light, heat, power were taken directly from the atmosphere. Atlantis during this period was a wonderful state of progress because she had been governed and shown the way to perfection by various ascended masters appearing from time to time and ruling for the spiritual uplift of the people. Again and again, all the way down the ages, whenever a great civilization has arisen, it has been founded on spiritual principles in the beginning and maintained obedience to those laws of life during the time of the ascendancy. However, the moment any government or the people themselves began to drift into lax ways, so that unjust and unclean use of life became habits either of officials or the people, disintegrations began and continue until they either return to the fundamental law of balance and purity or wiped out by their own discord, that the balance may be reestablished and new start a given. Casimir Poseidon was a direct descendant of the mighty ascended master, ruler of Atlantis. In fact, the civilization over which he ruled was a child of Atlantis, culture and attainment. His capital city was famous throughout the world for its magnificence and beauty. As the rural districts are shown, watch the method by which objects are transported, for the powers these people use was generated in an instrumental light box 2 feet square, 3 feet long, attached to the mechanism of the implement in use. The water supply from the stream was placed under control and its power also utilized. There was no need for police or military organizations of any kind because the method by which the people remained of the law and the wonderful sustaining power that was radiated, enabling them to give obedience unto it. To the east in the park stood a magnificent building. We approached it. Over the entrance were placed the words, God's living temple to man. We entered and found it much larger within than seemed apparent from the outside. There must have been seating capacity for at least 10,000 people. In the center of this immense temple stood a pedestal about 2 feet square, 20 feet high, made of self-luminous milk-white substance that gave off a white light with a birth of pink in it. Upon it stood a crystal globe 2 feet in diameter, made of some kind of substance holding the soft self-luminous white light within. It was very soft, and yet so intensely luminous that the entire building was brilliantly lit. The sphere, remarked Saint Germain, was made of a precipitated material enclosing an intense focus of light. It was drawn and placed in the temple at that period by one of the greatest cosmic masters as the sustaining life-giving activity for the people. It continually sent forth not only the light, but an energy and power which stabilized their activities and the empire. The sphere of light was focused by the great being and the building erected around it afterwards. It was really a participated focus and concentrated activity of the Supreme God Presence. The great cosmic master who established it appeared once a month beside the light and proclaimed the law of God, the law of government, the law of man. Thus he decreed the divine way of life was the focus of the Christ activity from the people of that age. Here Saint Germain stretched forth his hand again, and living, talking pictures of this great being passed before us. It is absolutely impossible to describe in words the glory of that presence. I can only say he was truly the Son of God in perfection, expression. In the moment, I heard a great cosmic master proclaiming the law to the people. The record and majesty of the presence and decree are burned into my memory for eternity. So clearly do they remain in my consciousness. I give his decree to you, just as it still stands before me. And this is what it says. Beloved children of the one mighty God, knowest thou not the life thou art using is from the one supreme being, eternally pure, holy and perfect. If thou dost aught to mar the beauty and perfection of the one life, thou cuttest thyself off from the gift of thy God. Thy life is the sacred jewel of thy God's love, the source of the secrets of the universe. Thy God does trust thee with his own heart light. Cherish it, adore it, and let it ever expand unto greater light and greater glory. Thy life is a pearl of the great price. Thou art the keeper of God's wealth. See thou use it for him only, and know thou hast received the light of life. For who uses thou shalt give an accounting. Life is a continuous circle, that principle upon which the city is built. If thou dost create that which is unlike unto thy source, and knowest his love and peace from within thee, if thou dost use thy power of creation to bless only, then as thou dost move around thy circle of existence, thou wilt know the joy of life, and unto it shall be added greater joy. If thou createst not like thy source, then thy evil shall return unto thee with more of its kind. Thou alone dost choose by thy destiny, and thou alone awareness to thy God, for the use thou dost make of life, thy being the greatest law no one can escape. Long have I proclaimed this law of life, the law of thyself. Thou art unto thyself, because thou canst always come unto thy God in thou dearest and perfection of life. I come not always to know, to hold thy straying feet upon the path of truth, nor to remind thee of thy eternal light, set upon a mountain top for thy guidance. In the far distance days I will speak within the heart of man, and if thou dost love life, thou wilt call upon me, abiding in my many selves. Let this not confound thee, my children. If thou wouldst know me, the light thou wilt have to seek me, find me, and have found, abide within me always. In that day the Father, Mother, Son will be one in the heart of man. The Son is forever the door of the way unto God. In thy mind, in thy heart, in my light, ever reminding thee of my presence. For in the name to come, I will be present only in that light. Then I will be wisdom in the mind to govern the love of thy heart, that thou mayest be filled with the peace of the one life God. Thy body is but the instrument of thy soul. Into thy soul must stream the light, or thou wilt perish. My light in thy mind, the way into the heart, and all light, only by my light in thee canst thou expand the light in every cell of thy being into greater and greater being. In thy throat is my light, which is thy power to speak my words. Through these I will illume, protect, and perfect my children. Words that do not this threefold mission are not my words, and can only bring misery when spoken. Meditate upon my light in thy mind, in thy heart, and thou shalt see within all things, know all things, and do all things. Then that which is not of me can never confound thee. I speak these words now, and they shall be engraved upon the table of earth in the memory of the children. In the far-off day of which I speak, one of God's children shall receive these words and shall give them forth to bless the world. In that time, when thou hast fully received my presence, thou art letting it always act in thy life and thy world, thou wilt find the cells of the body thou dost then occupy becoming bright with my light. And thou wilt realize thus canst continue on into the eternal body of light, the seamless robe of Christ. Then and then only wilt thou be free from the wheel of rebirth, having traveled thy long journey through human experience and fulfill the law of cause and effect. Thou shalt transcend all conditions governed by the law, and shall thyself have become the law, all, love, the one. Such is the eternal ascended body of Christ, said Saint Germain, turning to me, in which one is able to wield the scepter of dominion and be free. My son, you know you can ascend into the light of the one, for the light is in your mind and the light is in your heart. If you will stand in it firmly, you can and will raise your physical body of limitations into your pure, eternal body of light, forever youthful and free, transcending time, space, and place. Your glorious self stands ever waiting for you. come into its light and receive eternal peace and rest in action. It needs no preparation. It has all power. Come fully into the embrace of your light self, and that moment, even today, your present body can become ascended. Hope this is making sense, because, like I say, we're using thou and all kinds of things. A lot of people, like I say, it doesn't sometimes make sense. It's like reading the Bible. But I think all somewhere inside all of you is an awareness in your soul or in your light. As he finished speaking, the picture ceased. He went to a short distance further on and stopped at a place where a large flat stone lay on the ground. As Saint Germain focused his power upon it, the stone raised from the earth and moved it aside, disclosing an opening with steps leading downwards. We descended about 40 feet and came to a sealed door. He passed his hand quickly over the door, unsealing it and revealing certain hieroglyphs. Center your attention on this writing, he instructed. I did so and saw the words, God's living temple to man, stand out clearly on the door before me. There in front of me stood the physical doors we had just seen a short while previously in the living pictures. The door opened, we entered the room under one of the small domes built at each corner. In this were a great number of metal boxes about 2 feet long, 14 inches wide, 6 inches deep. Saint Germain opened one, and I saw they contained sheets of gold on which the records of that civilization had been written with a stylus. I realized there must be room which had been sealed and preserved under each of the 4 small domes, and that the large central dome had been built over the sphere of light. We found a secret passage connecting the 4 small rooms, passed on to a second of these, and saw the containers filled with jewels belonging to the temple. The third room contained gold and jewel ornaments, throne chairs and other chairs of gold. The throne chair was a striking example of the goldsmith's magnificent workmanship. The back formed into a shell, making a canopy over the head of the ruler, and from its sides hung golden drapes, made of tiny golden links, each forming a figure 8. These were looped back against the chair, making a delicate and extremely graceful effect. In the center of the room was a table about 14 feet long, 4 feet wide, made of real jade, resting upon a golden bronze pedestal. Near it stood 14 jade chairs, whose feet were tipped with gold, the seats curved, and their backs beautifully carved. On top of the back of each chair, as though standing guarded, rested a beautiful sphinx made of gold, the eyes set with yellow diamonds. These designs symbolize the immortality of the soul and the perfect divine being each individual becomes as he raises through the fire of suffering from the ashes of this human creation. Negative energy going on again. The 4th room, because whatever's going on, like my sacral feels like it's being torn apart and my third eye being smashed. The 4th room contains 7 different types of power boxes, I call them, that received and transmitted the force drawn from the universe for lighting, heating, and propelling power. The record showed these people were in contact with all parts of the world through wonderful airships. Following this civilization came one known as Pirua, Pirua, and after that the Incas, both stretching over a period of 1,000 years. Shortly before the city just described was buried, it reached the heights of its glory, and the great cosmic master who had drawn the light by which it was developed and sustained appeared for the last time to the empire. He came to warn the impending disasters and would have saved its inhabitants had they heeded him. He foretold the cataclysms that swept the empire into oblivion before 5 years had passed, and announced it was his last appearance among them. Those who wished to save themselves were instructed to leave that part of the country and were directed where to go, with the warnings that the final activity would be sudden and complete. As he finished the prophecy, his body faded rapidly from sight, and to the concentration of the people, the pedestal and the crystal globe holding the eternal light disappeared with him. For a time, the populances were disturbed by the forecasts of events affecting their empire, but after a year passed and nothing occurred, the memory of his presence became dull. The doubt began to creep in as to the fulfillment of his decree. The empire and those more advanced in spiritual growth left the kingdom and came to a certain place in the western part of the United States, where they remained in safety until the change had taken place. The great mass of people who remained became more and more skeptical, and after 2 years, one among them more aggressive than the rest attempted to set himself up as the emperor. When the real emperor had left the kingdom, he sealed both the palace and the temple in which the light had been maintained, and the would-be emperor attempted to force an entrance to the sealed temple and fell lifeless at its door. Near the end of the 5th year, at noon on the faithful day, the sun was darkened, and awful terror filled the very atmosphere. At sundown, terrible quakes shook the earth and demolished the buildings into unbelievable chaos. The land, which is now South America, lost its equilibrium and rolled to the east, submerging the entire eastern coast 160 feet. It remains so for several years, then gradually righted itself to within 60 feet of the original position where it remains today. That activity caused the widening of the Amazon. Previously, the river was 18 miles wide, deeper than it is today, and navigable from end to end. It flowed from what is now Lake Titicaca in Peru to the Atlantic Ocean. In a former time, there had been a canal built from the Pacific to Lake Titicaca, and the connecting with the Amazon formed an entire waterway between the two oceans. The name of the continent at the time was Miru, it having been given the name of the great cosmic master, whose principal focus the activity was at Lake Titicaca. The meaning of the name Amazon is boat destroyer, which has come down the centuries from the cataclysm period referred to the above. The rolling of the entire continent of South America explains many conditions on the western coast that the geologists and men of science have been unable to explain from the scientific data they have discovered up to the present time. Thus, do the great cataclysms of nature draw the cosmic veil over civilizations of splendid achievement. The only fragment of these come to light as time passes into eternity. This truth may be doubted by the outer world, but the records of that civilization now reposing at the Royal Teton will one day be its proof, reveal its existence and the accomplishments of the former ages. As I was shown these tremendous activities, I wondered why civilizations could be brought forth so wonderful, beautiful, and perfect in every way, then go down through the terrible destructive activities of a cataclysm. Saint Germain saw the question in my mind and volunteered the following explanation. You see, he said, when a group of mankind is fortunate enough to come under the instruction and radiation of a great master of light, such as this great cosmic being is, they are given an opportunity of seeing what the plan of life is for humanity. and the perfection they are intended to bring forth and live in by their own conscious effort. However, unfortunately, it has been so many times down the centuries that people will not try to understand life, but let themselves drop into a state of lethargy. They do not exert the necessary effort required to accomplish these things by the power of God within the individual. They begin to lean on the one giving the radiation. That sustaining power is only withdrawn when the individual ceases to make conscious effort to understand life and willingly work in harmonious cooperation with it. They rarely realize most of their blessings are the result of the sustaining power from the one giving the radiation. If a certain group of souls have been taught that way of the Master and remain lifetime after lifetime of their divine birthright, the hour arrives when no more assistance is permitted. It is then the radiation of the Ascended Master is withdrawn, and those souls are compelled to come face to face with the fact that sustaining and accomplishing power was not due to their own effort. And that's where we have to grow and evolve. That's really important. Cindy Bird Lady is sending you a message. So when we don't choose to generate that energy and light from inside, we go down, we go to sleep. That's why they keep telling you, just wait for Jesus to blink. Wait for him to just pop out of the clouds. Don't become like Jesus. Don't do all these things. They must understand they can only receive that for which an effort is made. And such activity the experiences passes through compels them to make the necessary self-conscious application. And when that is accomplished, expansion and the God dominion begin to express. There is no failure for anyone who continues to make self-conscious effort to experience dominion of the divine over the human, because failure only comes when self-conscious efforts cease. All experiences through which the individual passes exist for one purpose only, and that is to make him aware of his source. He must learn who he is, recognize himself as a creator, and such masters of what he creates. So you have to become a master. Everywhere throughout the universe, whenever the power to create is given to a being, the responsibility of creating is always coexistent with the power. All creation is self-conscious effort, and if the individual upon whom the great gift of life has been bestowed refuses to take his responsibility and do his duty, his experience in life will probe him with misery until he does. For mankind never was created in the conditions of limitation. He can have no rest until the perfection with which was endowed in the beginning is fully expressed. Perfection, dominion, harmonious use of control of all substance and force is the way of life, the original divine blueprint of humanity. God within the individual is that perfection, that dominion. It is that presence within the heart of everyone, which is the source of life, the giver of every good and perfect thing. When the individual looks to and recognizes his source as the outpouring of all good, he that moment automatically starts the flow of all good things unto him and his world, because his attention to his source is the golden key that opens every good thing unto him. The life in every person is God, and only by self-conscious effort to understand life and experience the fullness of good through himself, can the discord in the outer experience cease. Life and individual, the laws are one, and so it is unto eternity. Come, he continued, we will go to the buried city near the Yarra River. We traveled west and soon came to a light elevation. Saint Germain extended his hand and again vivified the etheric records of those people, and the place we observed was a second city of importance in the empire. The one from which we had just come was the focus of spiritual power and activity, while the second we were now seeing was the seat of commercial and governmental operations concerning the physical welfare of the population. Here was located the national treasury, mint, governmental, experimental, and inventive activities. Not so far distant from the city rose the mighty Andes, the source of the immense mineral wealth of the empire. I noticed one thing among these people that seemed most remarkable. All were so completely at peace and thoroughly content. They expressed quiet and exquisite rhythms as they moved about. The picture came to an end, and we proceeded to the only rocky spot visible. Saint Germain touched one of the rocks. It moved aside, and we saw a flight of 20 metal steps leading down. These descended and came to a metal door. We passed through, went down 20 steps more, and found ourselves before a massive sealed bronze door. He reached to the right and unsealed a square opening in which were metal stops, like those in an organ. He pressed two of these. The great mass slowly opened, and we stood in an immense room with everything just as it had been in the far-off time. It had been used as a display room for inventions and in Citria, to which the public had access. All the fixtures were made of metal combined with what looked like opalescent glass. This, said Saint Germain, was made by fusing process combining certain metals with glass in such a way as to make the metal strong as steel and imperishable. One man in the present age came very near the discovery of the same process, for he had all but one element, and that would have made it imperishable. The entire room was lined with the same particular metal, and three massive doors led from it. Saint Germain went to a box of stops, pressed three of them, and all doors opened at once. He entered the first one and found a passage long and narrow, more like a vault than a room. It was lined with curtains filled with discs of gold, about the size of a silver dollar, stamped with the head of the empire and an inscription that read, God's blessing to man. Entering the second door, we found similar containers filled with uncut jewels of some kind. In the third room, the containers were flat and held thin sheets of gold, on which were written the formulas of secret processes used in that period. Among these, said Saint Germain, are many formulas and processes which were not used in that former time. They will be given into the use of the present age, and we will use those things now as we go more into the age of Aquarius. When he went back to the boxes of stops and pressed another, the fourth door opened, which I had not noticed before. This led into an arc tunnel and passageway connecting the treasury with the mint. It must have been at least a quarter of a mile long, and at the far end we entered an enormous room. It was the main part of the mint. It was filled with a maze of machineries of most wonderful construction. Among many things I saw were the machines used for stamping the gold and cutting and polishing the jewels. They simply fascinated one They simply fascinated one, so perfect was their operation. Here Saint Germain showed me a species of malleable glass, clear as crystal. In this room were great quantities of native gold nuggets, gold dust, gold ingots, weighing 8 to 10 pounds each. I was speechless at such an amazing quantity of wealth in one place, and Saint Germain, knowing how I felt, remarked, "It is utterly impossible for such quantities of wealth as you see before you to be released into the mass of mankind, because the selfishness within the commercial world at the present time makes it the height of folly to let humanity waste more of nature's gifts. God and nature bestow their wealth lavishly upon the earth for the use and blessings of the soul who incarnate here, but the selflessness and lust for power within the feelings of mankind make them forget the higher ways of life and cause inhumanity to man. A few who rise to control the masses should have the intelligence to know that what helps the masses helps the individual most. But if they refuse to recognize the law of self-destruction follows, brought about by their own selfishness and the feelings of power to control others, bind the reasons of dull the perceptions of the outer mind to its own danger, and such individuals ride headlong to ruin in every case, ruin spiritual, mentally, morally, and physically, extending many times into the third and fourth embodiments, the following. So they got to reincarnate sometimes 4 times before they correct it. Only when mankind rises out of the mire of his own selfishness and the lust in all its forms can human beings be entrusted with all that God and nature hold ready for his right use. But any individual, as he cleanses himself of his own selfishness and lust, may have the fullest use of all these riches, when he will use them harmoniously and for the blessings of others. Individuals can make themselves ready to be custodians of these gifts, for in the age that is ready, ushered in, only those will have unlimited use of wealth who have made themselves worthy to be trusted keepers and dispensers of this treasure. God and nature provide these gifts for man to use rightly, and right use alone is the condition on which they may be received. Saint Germain crossed his hands upon his chest and continued, "Mighty God enters so firmly into the heart of thy children that they want only thee, then none shall want for any of thy greater gifts." He sealed everything as he had found it, and he returned to my body. He sealed everything and as he had found it, and we returned to my body, which I re-entered quickly. He again gave me a crystal cup filled with living substance, and I said, "My beloved son," or he said, "My beloved son, you will be a very valuable helper, and may God always bless you." With that blessing, he bowed and was gone. So tomorrow I'm going to read The Secret Valley. And so at times it can get a little confusing with the vows and this and that, but he's jumping in and out of the past. And there's records of all these civilizations. There's a lot of things they talk about Atlantis and Lemuria where we're going to have machines like they did. And people don't know how that is. But the universe knew everything that was going to happen. They even prophesied the downfall of Atlantis. They prophesied the downfall of Lemuria. They prophesied the downfall of Mu and all kinds of other cultures, because we've been on this planet for billions of years. And we've been evolving to this point where at some point we're going to get out of this greed and selfishness. And you have to do the work. Jesus is not going to blink and just turn you into Jesus. It's not just going to put you in heaven. You got to go inside yourself and clean up everything. You got to start going, wow, I need to change. And you got to go, well, all I can do is bring myself up in my light. That's what I told Cindy. I can keep bringing myself up here. I'll help her to go to whatever I can in her highest light, but she has to do it. I can be there, I can work with her, I can do stuff, but she has to do the work. And this is really important. Either that or you can let somebody steal your fire. You can be somebody else's dog. You can be a circus animal. You can lay around like a cat and say meow while somebody pets you. Or you can lay there and somebody can throw you a treat and you can bark like a little dog. What do you really want? People are brought to this site for a reason. I'm going to teach. I'm going to give knowledge. I'm going to give all kinds of things. But I can't do none of it for you. I spend my lifetime searching, looking, trying to understand what evolution is about. Evolution is going to go on whether you like it or not. And there's only one law. And if you understand those laws, you start living the right way.